Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Valuespain for the invitation and to all of you for your interest and your time. Well, my name is Julian Pascual. I'm founder of Buy&Hold, which is an independent Spanish fund asset management company. We are based in Valencia, so you can deduct that not all the fund managers are in Madrid. And since I'm the last talking in this meeting, I've been told that I can talk as long as possible. No, don't panic, don't panic. I'm going to be very short. Okay. Just a few words about the company working. We manage both equities and bonds on a bottom-up approach, very much value-oriented, very fundamental. We have three products: one equities, one mixed, and one fixed income. The three managers that manage these products have very long experience in the markets. And in equities, for instance, we have multiplied by 3 the performance over the last 15 years compared to 2 times in the case of the MCI Pan-Europe with dividends. Okay. Okay. The company we are going to talk today about is Grifols. Grifols is a company normally classified as a pharma company. However, as I'm going to explain to you right now, we don't believe it's that much as pharma as a manufacturer of pharma products. We usually don't invest in pharma companies because of the complexity of the business. We believe that you have to know a lot about medical issues to have a view on a pharma company. However, this is a different company. This is a one-product company and very much focused on manufacturing. I'm going to explain to you right now. This company has 4 main divisions. The most important one is the bioscience, which is the one-product company that I mentioned right now. I mentioned a minute ago. This company mainly what does is the fractioning of blood to produce blood derivatives that are very useful for medical purposes and therapeutical and palliative purposes. Okay, I will explain now later. The second division, the second most important division, is the diagnostic. We mostly focused on blood testing. Okay, and the other 2 divisions are very small. They're also related to blood, but very, very small. Okay. The first interesting thing about blood fractioning is that it's a growing market. In the last 25 years, has grown at an annual growth rate of 8%. In the last 10 years, has increased to 11%. Why is that? Because the fractioning of blood is very much related to immunodeficiencies and autoimmune diseases that are increasing very much in the Western countries. Okay. So you see that it's a growing market. The second important thing about this sector is that the 4 main players represent more than 70% of the market. The 3 main represent almost 65%. Grifols is one of them. Okay, so for these 2 reasons, the sector seems to be very interesting. You know, it's really growing a lot. And is very much concentrated. Okay. Here you have 4 main sub-products of Grifols. Grifols produces much more products, but these are probably the 4 main sub-products that blood derivatives that Grifols produce. And Grifols is the leader in all of them, except in albumin, which is the second largest player. Okay. Well, so basically, just to sum up what I've told so far, you have a sector which is requires large investments, but the blood fractioning is a manufacturing process, extremely complicated, extremely regulated, and with large investments, and with a lot of technical know-how. It's not that much about patents and R&D, but it also has to do with R&D, but mostly has to do with technical skills in the manufacturing process. Okay, so very large investments, extremely regulated. It's usual that the manufacturing plants, the fractioning plants receive And also the blood collection center receive several visits from the regulator every year. This sector has also to be vertically integrated. It's not only about fractioning the blood, but also you have to collect the blood. And this is also a complicated business. You have to have a lot of collection centers. Again, very expensive, very, very regulated, and so on. A lot of know-how. There has been several unsuccessful attempts to enter the industry. For instance, Bayer, the large German company, tried to enter the sector some 20 years ago, and finally they sold. Okay, it's very difficult to enter the sector unless you actually buy a company. Okay, buy a large player. In the last 20 years, the four main players have increased the market share from 23% to 70%. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. This is the process. Basically, you got the blood, and you fraction the blood, and you separate the red cells, the plasma, the water, and the proteins. The proteins are the key interesting thing. You know, in the proteins, you have these subproducts and these blood derivatives that are very useful for medical purposes. The process again. And here we have the difference between a normal pharma company and, sorry about this, sorry very much. Sorry very much. Okay. And then here you have the difference between a normal pharma company and Grifols. In a normal pharma company, you have the cost structure split, equally split more or less, between R&D, sales and marketing, and manufacturing, and general administrative. Okay, this is here. You can see here below, and above you see the cost structure of Grifols, where 57% of the costs are related to manufacturing. Okay, and remember your large manufacturing plants, a lot of investments, and a lot of technical know-how. Okay, let's go rapidly through the main four products of this company. The first one is the immunoglobulin. This is one of the probably the most important product in this company. We don't have the sales breakdown of these four products. The company doesn't disclose this information, but we estimate that this can represent some 25-30% of sales and profits in this company, in the bioscience division, probably 20% of sales and profits in the whole company. It's mostly used. Well, the immunoglobulin is the antibodies that defend us from external aggressions. It's mostly used in immunodeficiencies and autoimmune diseases, okay? And also, for instance, in bone marrow transplants and this kind of stuff. Albumin is the second most important product for this company. This is it's a substitute of plasma and blood. Okay, it's a part of the blood that you get an injection of albumin, your blood production improves a lot. You know, so it's mostly used in traumatic shock or hemorrhage. It's a substitute of blood basically and plasma. Factor VIII is the element of the blood that produces that stops bleeding. It's mostly used in patients with hemophilia. And finally, the fourth most important product for Grifols is the alpha-1 antitrypsin, which is a protein that can prevent a genetic disorder that can cause a very serious chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Okay. And finally, just a couple of words on diagnostic. Diagnostic is the second largest division for this company, represents approximately some 20% of sales and profits, and is very much related to blood testing. Grifols is a clear leader in this area on a worldwide basis. They are clear leaders in nucleic acid technology, NAT technology, which is the most advanced technology for blood testing. Blood testing is getting more and more complicated, and for security reasons has a lot of growth potential. Well, they are the clear leaders in this technology with 55% of global market share. Okay, and this technology is still only adopted by 1/4 of blood tests in the world, so it has a lot of room for penetration. Okay, the key investment point in the investment case of Grifols is that we believe that in the last 3 years, the company has spent a lot of money expanding the manufacturing capabilities. Blood derivatives is a clear growth market. The applications for blood derivatives are discovered every year. You discover new applications for blood derivatives. So there's a clear shortage of plasma and blood derivatives in the world. So Grifols is a family company, as we will explain later. So they focus very much on the long term, and they decided some 3 years ago to spend a lot of money in increasing their manufacturing capabilities, not only in collection centers, where they have multiplied almost by 2 the number of collection centers from 2016 to 2017, and now it's the largest company in the world in terms of collection centers, blood collection centers, but also in terms of million of liters of fractionation capacity. You see that, for instance, in the last 7 years, they have multiplied almost by 2 the fractionation capabilities. It's a huge effort in terms of investment. Okay. And another important point here is that they announced recently, some 3 months ago, the acquisition of a minority stake in a Chinese company called Shanghai RAA. Instead of a cash transaction, what they did was they exchanged 45% of the diagnostic division in exchange of 26% of this company. However, they find a shareholders agreement where they have veto power decisions, veto power in some strategic decisions, such as the capital increases, asset sales. They also have they also are taking care. Well, they're taking control of all the technical process of the company, all the manufacturing process. Okay. Well, China is the market that grows the most in the world. Has been growing at a rate of 16% over the last years. The plasma-derived products is one of the strategic sectors for the Chinese government. They publish strategic sectors, and they classify 20 sectors that were strategic for the development of China, and one of them was this, the blood derivatives. And Shanghai RAA is the second largest company. This market, China, is very fragmented, is very local. They have left behind in terms of technology compared to the Western world. The top players only have 12-13% of market share each, compared to 20-25% in the case of the Western world. Shanghai is the second largest, very close to the first one. Okay. Well, in terms of risk opportunities, let's start with the opportunities. The most important opportunities in this company are new applications for blood derivatives. I'm going to mention just 2. One is the AMBAR. The AMBAR is a new development related to Alzheimer. The company has published 2 press releases related to this development. The first one was in the middle of last year, and the last one was 1 week ago. The second one was very optimistic, and they said that there's a lot of, there's been significant advance in terms of progression in this process. Basically, what they do is that they extract the blood, they sort of clean the blood, and they transfer back the blood to the patient with an injection of albumina. Okay. In principle, since there's nothing new, there's no new drug. Basically, they are using albumina, which is a widely spread drug. Well, it's a widely spread blood derivative, used in many applications. You don't need a very long application process. Okay, you could get a recommendation, or in any case, the process will be much shorter. It could be in the market in 1-2 years' time. If this is successful, This is something palliative. As you know, they are not curing the Alzheimer, but they are slowing down the speed at which Alzheimer is developing. Okay. If this is successful, the potential would be huge. I mean, we are talking about multiplying by several times the sales of Grifols. Okay. The second application is the Precious and Apache projects that are related to liver diseases. And finally, just to mention, as I have told you before, that there is a clear trend to increase of immunodeficiencies and autoimmune diseases, and that creates more and more demand for blood derivatives. There is a clear shortage of blood derivatives in the world. The main two risks have to do with the substitution of Grifols products. The first one is the factor A. We mentioned before the factor A is a product that stops bleeding. Well, there is a product already in the market produced by Roche, which is very successful, and although it's more expensive, but clearly this sector should decrease going forward. Okay. And that represents some 6% of Grifols sales currently. Okay, and secondly, there's another substitute. We are in the early stage of development of another substitute for immunoglobulin. They are in phase 2. They should take, assuming that they are successful, but we still don't know whether they are going to be or not. They will take between 4 and 7 years to be in the market. Okay. When you read about these new products, basically we understand that this is not something targeted at substituting blood products, natural blood products, but instead of compensating the lack of supply. Demand is clearly much higher than supply, and the rationale behind those developments are to supply the lack of mitigate the lack of supply. Okay. The company believes, and also the developers are not targeting to, as I told you, to substitute all the market, but just to target some specific applications. For instance, 10% of the cases where immunoglobulin treatments do not work well. For some patients, for whatever reasons, they don't work well with natural blood. Okay, so they are targeting at those kind of segments. Okay. And also, Grifols is also participating in this segment through partnerships. Okay, Grifols spend a lot of money, not only in acquisitions, but also in R&D every year. And 7% of sales is devoted to R&D. Okay, there are two types of shares in Grifols, A and B shares. A shares represent some 65% of shares, and B shares represent 1/3 of total shares. The economic rights are basically the same. B shares are entitled to 1 more dividend, which is not material. Okay. Apart from that, in terms of economic rights, it's basically the same. The only difference between these two shares is that the I shares have voting rights and B shares do not have voting rights. However, in case of a transactional event or relevant event that could be detrimental to B shareholders, you need the necessary approval of B shareholders. So the votes of B shareholders wouldn't put together with all the votes of the A shares, but instead you will need to have the specific approval of B shareholders. So in case of change of control, something like that, the B shareholders would have voting rights. We don't understand very well the difference between the spread between these two kinds of shares has increased over the time. The company doesn't understand either. The A shares are much more liquid than the B shares. That's also another thing to take into account. Okay, but in terms of economic rights, they are the same. Currently, the difference between these two types of shares is 30%. This is the EPS growth of Grifols, very impressive, over the last 12 years. The last 3 years here are our estimates. Okay, we are making very, very, very conservative assumptions. Basically, we are assuming that they are going to grow at the average growth rate of the last year, slightly lower than the average growth rates of the last years. And also, we are assuming that the margin compression that the company has suffered in the last year because of the or the huge investment they have made is going to be reversed a little bit. Okay, so basically margins are going to reverse a little bit. Okay. Also, one of the reasons why Grifols probably haven't performed very well in the market, has been more or less flat over the last 4 years, is because over the last 4 years you see that the EPS growth has been mostly flat, has increased but not that much compared to the past. Again, I insist this is very much related to the fact that they have multiplied almost by 2 the manufacturing capabilities of the company. This is the return on equity. Okay, the average is slightly above 15%. We are assuming that's going to be slightly lower going forward, but probably should be higher. It's around 17, 18% in the last 5 years. We are assuming lower return on equity going forward. This is the net debt to EBITDA. Another problem with the company, another risk with the company is that many people believe that it has a lot of leverage. Again, they have invested a lot. In our model, taking into account the company assumptions in terms of CapEx going forward, you see that the cash generation is enormous. And in 3 years, sorry about this. And you will see that in 3 years, more or less, the net debt to EBITDA would go down from more than 4 times to almost 2 times. Okay? So this is not clearly a problem with this company. We don't believe it's a problem. And finally, in terms of valuation, there's a discount of 30% between the A and B shares. And B shares currently trade at around 16 times P for this year, less than 14 times for 2020. Which we believe is extremely low for a company that can grow at the higher end of double digit, we think in our model. Making some conservative assumptions, we believe that over the next years, the company could grow much higher than double digit, something close to 15 or even 20% in terms of EPS growth. Okay? And that's it. So thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. Just one quick question on the Chinese strategic move. What do you think is going to happen in the next few years there? Because being a minority shareholder, even if you have some rights, how are they going to be able to get the cash flow via dividends or not? Or what do you think is going to be the plan? Take a majority or grow there without the cash flow? What is your base case scenario? Thanks.
Okay. That's a good question. I mean, that's something that the Chinese acquisition can be something very good, can end up something very bad. Okay, apart from Grifols, the other main shareholder is a government corporation. Okay, and we understand it's like a private equity corporation in China. We understand that they are on an exit mode. Okay, and the company believes, even though they don't say that openly, they believe that going forward they could substitute this company. They are very confident. Grifols, they are very confident that China has a lack of technology. This is very critical for them. The usage of blood derivatives in the Chinese population is very small. As long as people, the middle class grows, you have to deliver better medical services, and this is very critical. The blood derivatives, and they believe that going forward they could buy out the Chinese private equity group. Okay.
You said that being vertically integrated is very important, upward integrated. So I guess that I'd like to understand a little bit more about the incentives of vertical integration in terms of people who give their blood, do they get paid, and that payments are FDA regulated or it's free market? That's one question related to incentives. The second one, I guess most extraction points are placed in hospitals. Do they get rebates, or how does it work?
Okay, I'm going to answer the first question. The second question, I didn't understand.
Yeah, first question.
The first one is clear. The second one?
Second one is the extraction points, blood extraction points. Right. I guess most of them are placed in hospitals, probably, or do they get rebates, or? Or
Okay.
Not really, I mean.
Okay. Why is that important, vertical integration? Because it's extremely difficult to get blood. That's the reason. For instance, in Spain, you can. I mean, it has to be donors, and it's almost impossible. Okay. So most of the blood centers of Grifols are in the US because in the US people get paid. Okay. However, they are not get paid for the blood. They get paid for their time. Very, very American. Okay, so it's very complicated. To get blood is very complicated. I mean, you only do the manufacturing process. What you can end up is that with huge investment in manufacturing and with no blood, because it's very difficult to get blood. There's a clear shortage of blood in the world. Okay, that's the reason why they are developing synthetic substitutes. Okay, so it's very important to be vertically integrated for security reasons in terms of production, for security reasons in terms of financials. Otherwise, you risk making huge investments and having no blood, and also because of security reasons and quality of the product and so on. Okay, in terms of testing the blood, making sure that there's no problem with the blood, and this kind of stuff. Okay, so I mean, you cannot be in the sector unless you are vertically integrated.
But who sets the rates? It's the regulator, or it's like free market, or you offer what you want? Or like...
For, blood donors, blood collection is almost forbidden in almost all countries. So 80% of the blood collection centers of Grifols are in the US, and they recently acquired a German company. In Germany, you can also get blood, paying people. Okay, but for instance, in Spain, most countries, is not possible. It has to be by donors, okay? The price? The price for blood collection?
Yes.
It's very cheap. Like, well, the price you mean if I give blood, how much money I get? $20, something like that.
Yeah.
In the US, I think it's $20.
And the second question was about the rebates of the hospitals, because I guess the hospitals charge you for being there.
No, you have vertical integration means that you don't buy the blood, but you actually have your own collection centers.
Okay.
So most of the blood that Grifols produces is through their own collection centers. They are vertically integrated. Some blood they buy the blood from, in some cases, but maybe it's 10% of the total production. It's very small. So 80% of the production is vertically integrated. They have their own collection centers in the street. So blood collection center, and it's a business that belongs completely to Grifols.
It's a bus, basically, in the middle of the street, or
yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.